Hello everyone and welcome to the Curious Calculator. Today we're going to be covering the following problem. Write the equation for the hyperbola centered at 0, 0 with a focus at 5, 0 and which passes through the point 5, 24. Before beginning here, let's go ahead and review our general equations for the hyperbola. We have two cases here. And the things to notice here for each case is, well, on the first case, the x term is going to be positive, and that means it's going to be opening to the left and right. And then in case 2, our y term is going to be positive, which means that it's going to be opening up and down. And if you want to go ahead and pause the video here and kind of compare and contrast the other information under each case, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to continue on now. So looking back at our problem here, we have a center at 0, 0, and that's our HK. And we have a focus at 5, 0. So this means that we have an H plus 5, comma, K. Now, going over here and looking at the cases here, we can see that in case 1, we have a center at HK and vertices at H plus or minus A, comma, K. And then in case 2, we have a center at HK and vertices at H, comma, K plus or minus A. And so looking at our problem here, we're actually going to fall into the first case here, case 1. And that means that our parabolas, or our hyperbola, is going to be opening up to the left and right, and our x term is going to be positive. And okay, so let's see, I'll go ahead and write down the point here as well. We have a point 5, 24. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing down what we can here. So we know that in our case c equals 5, and so we can say that c squared, so c equals 5, and so c squared equals a squared plus b squared. We have 25 equals a squared plus b squared. And then also we know our center is 0, 0, and we have a focus at, so we have center 0, 0, so we can say that we have x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. And notice that I'm getting this because in our equation up here, I'm plugging in 0 for h and 0 for k, which just leaves us with an x squared and a y squared on top. And we're going to have 1. Okay, so let's see here. So we can say that, and we also know that we have the point 524. So we can actually go ahead and plug that point into this equation here where we have x and y. So that would become, with the point 524, we would have 25 over a squared minus, and then 24 squared is going to be 576 over b squared equals 1. Okay, so where to go from here? Well, we can notice that right here we have 25 equals a squared plus b squared, and then here we have 25 over a squared minus 576 over b squared equals 1. And so we have two equations and two unknowns. And so what we're going to have to do here is solve using these two equations. And so I am going to go ahead and solve the first equation here, the 25 equals a squared plus b squared, for a squared. So I will get that a squared equals 25 minus b squared. And now I'm going to plug that into our second equation here for a squared. And so I'll get 25 over 25 minus b squared minus 576 over b squared equals 1. Okay, so now I want to clear out the denominators. So I'm going to multiply both the left and right side of this equation by the common denominator of b squared times 25 minus b squared. And so if I do that, this becomes, let's see here, 25b squared minus 576 25 minus b squared equals b squared 25 minus b squared. And that right there is that common denominator I just multiplied both the left and right hand side by. And that's why we can see when I multiplied it by this first term here, the 25 minus b squared canceled out, and I was just left with the b squared on the top. And in the second term, the b squared canceled out with that denominator, and then I was left with the 25 minus b squared on top here. Okay, so let's continue on here. I'm going to multiply things through, so I'm going to get 25b squared minus, this is going to become 14,400 plus 576b squared, and this equals 25b squared minus b to the fourth. And let's go ahead and rewrite that as b to the fourth plus 576b squared and minus 14,400 equals 0. We can notice there in that step that the 25b squared canceled out with the 25b squared on this side. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to factor. And so we can factor this as b squared plus 600 times b squared minus 24 equals 0, right? Because 600 times negative 24 gives us 14,400, and 600 minus 24 gives us that 576 there. And now what we want to do is well, we have two options here. We can either say that b squared equals negative 600 or b squared equals 24, because those are the values of b squared that will get us to 0. But we really only have one option here, because we're not going to say that the b squared for our hyperbola is going to be a negative value, like negative 600. So we're going to choose that b squared equals 24, the positive value. Awesome. So now we can look back at the top here where we had that c squared equals 25, and we can go ahead and plug in what we just solved for the b squared. So we have, let's see here, 25 equals the b squared plus a squared. So we have a squared plus 24. And so that means that a squared equals 1. Alright, so now we can go ahead and write our final equation here. We have a squared is 1, b squared is 24. So our final equation is going to be x squared over 1 minus y squared. Well, let me change that a little bit. Y squared over 24 equals 1. And that right there is going to be our final answer. I'd like to end today's video with a little fun fact from philosophy. Did you know that conic sections, such as the hyperbola, was created by the ancient Greek mathematician Menaechmus? And although he was not a philosopher himself, it is well known that he was friends with the famous philosopher Plato.